So I teach in New York City, and this is my 14th year of teaching, with 1 year away from the classroom, which was last year. So I'm just back after that year away. So I'll explain that later. I actually started, I got emergency certification in Providence, Rhode Island, and I started as a full-time sub. So I got to just like go to different schools. I probably went to every 7th through 12th grades public school in Providence, and kind of got some kind of taste, and decided I wanted to learn to teach. I was very skeptical about the school system, and I didn't really go into it thinking that I would be a career teacher. I really wasn't sure, but it was like, this is the most interesting thing I could do. I definitely understood that I needed to learn to do it. I couldn't just jump in and just be great or something. And so I went to Bank Street College, which is a very small progressive teacher education school in New York. And there I got a lot. It was a really wonderful, very supportive master's degree program. And in it, I got, coursework it wasn't like a school of education. So these weren't professors. These were instructors who had like classroom experience. I mean, significant classroom experience. And then I had advisement and student teaching and all of that. So I met a wonderful mentor there. And her name is Madeline Ray, and she really had a progressive way of teaching us how to work in the classroom with kids. So I wanted to do student-centered teaching, and you can have a grand vision of how that's going to be, but there's a lot of technique to it, and you have to learn it, and there are a lot of concepts to understand. So at Bank Street, we studied child development in depth. That was probably the best thing that they provided, and then she helped me with curriculum, framework, and then just really being in there in the classroom with me, not just through my student teaching, but through my first and second year. She still came and visited me and worked with me on curriculum through a partnership that Bank Street had with the district. So I started teaching in East Harlem at a very high need school. So there's like one of those schools where the test scores aren't growing and the kids are, the test scores aren't growing and the school's being threatened to be shut down, which is like happening. It happens all over New York City. So, when the going gets tough, the threats start to come, and it's just sad that it works that way. But I had a wonderful beginning working with her. And then like in my third year, the head of that partnership, who was the dean of Bank Street, this guy named John Snyder, wonderful person, is longtime colleagues with Barnett Berry of Center for Teaching Quality. And Center for Teaching Quality at that point was doing like their own research, but there was this discussion listserv group of, accomplished teachers from around the country. Now, I was a third year teacher, so I didn't really exactly fit the bill there, but I think Barnett had gone to John, who ran, a school of education, saying, we have all these accomplished teachers who are far along in their career, but we're kind of concerned that we don't have like kind of new blood. Like we want this conversation. We want to, keep growing this movement. So they needed younger people, newer teachers. And so John recommended me because, I was always there saying like, I was always there giving my feedback, and every opportunity, at Bank Street, or like anytime there was like something happening, like a panel or something, I would go. I was really interested in what was happening in the classroom, and like how we could really make change. I guess, I was still like, I was very fired up, but still skeptical of whether we could really change this system that I felt like wasn't serving kids, or wasn't serving kids well. So anyway, so I joined the listserv, and I, ended up like thrust into these conversations with these amazing teachers around the country who, understood teaching and had like really unique perspectives, but also understood, the policy and politics of education, and from there, and we're sharing across geography and different kinds of schools and different subjects. And so it was fascinating. And that was around, you know, still kind of like early in NCLB. But so that, you know, those issues were really just, the testing stuff was really starting to ramp up. And then they asked me if I like to start a blog, basically. I think, and so there were at that point just four bloggers with Center for Teaching Quality. And so I joined that platform and started blogging about what was happening in the classroom. So, you know, it was I wrote what was happening off the top of my head, kind of. I didn't, you know, go through rounds of editing, and it was wonderful because I got to articulate, you know, concerns, big ideas, tell stories, and it really helps you think, and it really helps you reflect, and it helps you get better as a teacher and think about who you are and think about what's happening and why. And so writing is it's just powerful. And sharing it was very interesting. I mean, it was unnerving at first. I also thought nobody was reading, but then turns out people are reading, and little by little over time, you start to get a sense of, it took years to get a sense of who the audience was, and that there actually was an audience, but there was and is. And so I really encourage you, if there are opportunities to write publicly, to blog, you can start your own blog, and, you know, and now with social media, so I guess it's easier to share. So the blogging led, I mean, let's see, there's a few different pathways that happen simultaneously. So one was that there were projects that were happening at Center for Teaching Quality. One of those was like to work with a group of 12 teachers to write this book called Teaching 2030. So that was like, we got together and imagined the future of teaching. And I guess it was published in around 2010, I want to say. So like, we're almost halfway there. We're nearing halfway there, not quite. And so that was a place to take like all of the things that we were advocating for, and kind of the concerns that we had, and like lay it out in like in a way together, and agreeing about, you know, what this whole system could look like. And that was also very exciting and illuminating for me. And I also, with my mentor, Madeline, had taught me this method. She really just had an idea about how novels could be taught in a more progressive way. So taking that whole class novel and bringing it into the 21st century, so that it wasn't, you know, the little spoon feeding novels and taking, you know, a whole marking period, reading a novel and doing packets and such. And so I worked on that starting from my student teaching, and I kept working on it. It was a compelling idea, which was basically that you let students read the whole book, or you want them to read the whole book. Okay. I know you have eyebrows raised, you have questions about that, but you want them to read the whole book and then analyze it. So kind of like you wouldn't be showing students a corner of a painting and asking them to like analyze it and do all this stuff with it, and then show them a little bit more and a little bit more. That's not how we look at art, right? So novels are art. So we don't, you know, what about letting them have the whole picture, which is what the teacher has always, right? The teacher always has the whole picture. So the idea is let them in on what you know, let them have the whole picture, and then do the analysis. So obviously the question, okay, so how are they just going to like read it on their own? That's kind of been the, 10 years of, well now, 14 years, but at the time, 10 years of work on that led me to write a book about it. And so writing the book was a lot easier because I had been blogging. So I was very used to writing. And the other thing is that publishers had seen my work. So I was able to actually had publishers approaching me. Do you have an idea for a book? Because they saw that I wrote, regularly and could articulate my ideas. and it gets better over time too. The more you write, the easier it gets, and the more you're able to kind of build on ideas that you had in the past. And so I was able to, find a publisher who wanted to work with me on this book. Publishing the book then in itself was another kind of game changer because, I also took on leadership work at my school. So I've been, a team leader, grade team leader, a department chair, PLC coach at different schools. It's a different, the roles configured differently. But so I feel very comfortable taking on those roles. I see them very much as a service role. It's doing a service. It's helping things that need to be done, helping support and empower others, right? But one thing I really was never able to do was to kind of be like, this is about teaching us to do it. Was that memorable? And it's sort of not how peer-to-peer learning work. Has heard you're like, even if you successfully, right? So that was always interesting to me. And I kind of, after I found out that people were reading the book and we're actually trying out the idea in their classroom and having success and having questions and adapting it and growing it, I kind of let go of, I don't need to convince the teacher next door to do this. People can opt in all over the world. So because of social media and because of, having that book that people can read, the power of the word, the written word, people all over the world are doing this. And I mean, it's gone from like people being like, that's a crazy idea, to people not thinking it's crazy. I mean, and finding ways to empower students in whole class novel study. So, and then the other thing that happened out of that is that people will then ask me to, do workshops that basically help their teachers to implement it. And again, that's kind of an opt-in sort of thing where people are asking me for that, as opposed to me trying to convince, my own department to do it this way. So to some extent, leading by example in school works, but it's also, it's not exactly for everybody. And the other thing I've come across is just people in my own school thinking, oh, well, that's like her personality. Like not actually recognizing that there's a method. So I'm just, I don't think it's I don't think it's my personality. I think it's a method, and everybody would implement it in a different way according to their personality and the way that they lead kids. But there's methodology. But this is the kind of thing I like to think about. So what happened is, and I'll try to wrap this up. I realize I'm like probably okay. So at like 36 or 37, I had a child, which, I always wanted to, but had waited a long time. And so I had been working full time and doing all of this writing and all of these, any project that came my way, I said yes. And I did it. And I still managed to go to happy hour, and I still, had friends, and who knows how it all worked out. I was definitely taxed and like a little worn out, but very excited and just running. And then so, it was fabulous. Like, okay, we're having a baby. And then post baby, I knew I was going to have to give up kind of like going out a lot, which I didn't care. But what I didn't realize was that all that extra work, like the toll it was going to take on my ability to just my time, my bandwidth, to be like lean in and push my career. So I definitely had to slow down and like it changed a little bit how I worked, as a teacher in my own classroom. But So I guess that's where I got the bright idea that maybe I'd put in enough time in the classroom, and maybe it would be okay for me to leave the classroom and pursue just the writing and the consulting and the ideas part, and the adult part. And I thought that a way to do that might be to get a doctorate, and then kind of become a professor, where they have a lot of flexibility in their schedule. And like, so I left the classroom, and with my family, we actually moved to Massachusetts because my family's there and my husband's family's nearby. Anyhow, we lived there last year, and I did my GREs, and I applied to doctoral programs and researched them and everything, and also like wrote the most of a second book during that time. That was my other goal, like during that gap year. And then my plan was to, start a doctoral program this year. And I did get a great funded opportunity, and with a great professor who was doing research with kids, where the kids actually have input. She's designing literacy research with students, and partnering with a teacher. And like, it was really wonderful. And I feel like it would have been wonderful. But it was good I spent a year away before jumping into that commitment, because I felt very unsettled being away from the classroom, being away from a school community. And even, all these meetings that I would have with professors, and just trying to wrap my head around the research world, I got cold feet. And I really, really got confused about what I was supposed to do, what I meant to do. Even to the point I hired a coach, to not a literacy coach, like a life type coach, somebody to help me think through this, and so that I would make sure that I was making a decision that was aligned to like who I am at core. And through that process was really helpful. And through the process, I kind of I decided that teaching was more of a core part of who I am than what I'd realized. That I didn't feel quite myself. I didn't feel like it was the best match for what I have. And then part of that was just I've built up such a skill set as a teacher. And even though I was going to be like bringing those ideas into a new arena, there was so much of those skills I was like never going to use again, unless I would be like going and, doing guest teaching now and then, not the same. So, and then I also looked at the finances of doing 5 years with no salary really, with consulting and this and that. That sounded a little unsettling. Higher education is changing and everything. So I was thinking, it's going to be such a salary bump to do higher education, to be a professor. And then I'm comparing with New York City teacher salaries. Sure, not great in New York City, but there's a pension. I was already 10 years into my pension and everything. So this is real talk. I'm just letting you know. I weighed all those things and was just like, I'm really not certain that this path is leading me toward something that's going to be a lot better than what I already have, especially since I'm already able to get these. I have a process for learning in the classroom, for like pursuing questions in the classroom with my kids. I have a process for reflecting on it and writing about it and then disseminating. I mean, most research studies get like 2 or 3 readers, actually. Most like university research studies, whereas like whole novels for the whole class has, thousands and thousands of readers. So that's right there is kind of interesting. So I decided to come back, and luckily I was able to actually come right back to the school that I left, right back to the same position. So I was really fortunate that way. I'm kind of just sitting with it right now. I'm really enjoying being back. I'm still learning, and I'm just kind of sitting with like, I still have to kind of finish this book and figure out what my goals are moving forward. But it's been an incredible ride, and I'm just ready to keep going.